Spiritual Activism, Embracing Healing and Self-Discovery. For this second essay on the topic of spiritual activism, I would first like to refine my working definition of the concept to the following. Intentionally reforming, in effect challenging to the status quo, words and actions for the common good, informed and inspired by a growing understanding and possibly direct experience of the ultimate unity of all life, coupled with an intensifying love for others, life, and God, the God of your understanding. And over time, a deep healing, liberation, recovery from destructive habitual patterns, in part by regular, consistent, long-term spiritual practices. After posting the first essay on this topic, I realized that my initial definition did not explicitly capture the deep healing component of the spiritual journey that I intended. This latest definition attempts to do so. While different terms are used in the inner traditions of our world religions, as well as paths of personal transformation not directly associated with a specific religion, for example, integral life practice based on the work of Ken Wilber, spiritual healing or awakening from spiritual sleep requires the choice to turn inward to begin self-observation with an open, compassionate, honest orientation to increase self-awareness or self-knowledge. The beginning of awakening from spiritual sleep is to first acknowledge that one is asleep and that there is a painful degree of discontent present, or perhaps an element of unmanageability to our life. Many of us avoid this work until reaching this point. We admit to ourselves and to the God of our understanding, "No, I truly do not got this." Through regular self-observation, we begin to notice our habitual patterns and character defects, language from 12 steps, or negativities, or shadow work, language from Carl Jung's work. As difficult as it is to explain, we begin the spiritual healing or liberation as soon as we start to see these aspects of ourselves, because they reveal a distinct observing self from the destructive act or mode of being. As stated in Essay 1 of this series, the material that I share in these essays on spiritual activism is not original. It comes from the systems of personal transformation, those directly associated with religions and some that are not, that I have studied over 20 plus years. However, I may not always be able to remember which tradition or what teacher I may have received a teaching from, but I will strive to make those connections for readers. Of note, the world's religious traditions all have inner spiritual traditions, as well as more visible and known outer expressions or exoteric traditions with which we are more familiar. While some spiritual paths, such as 12 steps, integrate prayer and meditation later in the healing process, my study of and experiences with Buddhism, contemplative Christianity, and other systems of self-transformation, for example, the Fourth Way, inform my encouragement to consider a meditation practice coupled with other self-observation practices at the beginning and throughout the spiritual journey, unless one has experienced severe trauma and has not yet engaged in any type of therapy or has only recently begun therapy. I am not suggesting an either-or here, as I have benefited from both on my spiritual journey, but sharing my understanding of sequencing, especially even when one experienced significant trauma and has not yet engaged in any traditional counseling work. Meditation, or simply moments of silence and solitude, are essential for the spiritual journey, because they support the cultivation of mental space in which greater clarity and objectivity can arise. Starting and maintaining a regular practice, which I encourage at least 5 times a week, if not daily, will provide the essential foundation for the journey to spiritual activism as we begin to slow down enough to become to see ourselves and to start gaining self-awareness. Initially, this growing self-awareness can be extremely difficult. For example, when I started meditating over 15 years ago, I was shocked by the busyness of my mind, the speediness of my being, and the anger underlying my activism and much of my life, quite frankly. This was not pleasant, but it was liberating because I was able to start seeing and facing habitual patterns in self-destructive and hurtful ways, which provided the needed opening for deep change work to begin. Such internal seeing and recognizing opens the door to deep change by shedding light on the option to interrupt the automatic or habitual reaction by refraining and replacing. Both simple to say, but not easy to do, as we all know from our own personal efforts to break unhealthy habits. We will continue the series with Essay 3.